Have you noticed something strange? Some of the world's greatest cars are quietly losing the engine that made them legendary. Ferrari is replacing them. Lamborghini is changing them. Even brands that built their entire identity around 12-cylinder monsters are moving on. So why is the V12 engine disappearing? Was it really too expensive? Too inefficient? Or is there a much bigger reason almost nobody talks about? For decades, the V12 wasn't just an engine, it was the ultimate symbol of automotive engineering. If a company wanted to prove it could build one of the greatest cars on Earth, it built a V12. Smooth, powerful, incredibly refined, and capable of producing a sound that enthusiasts still consider unmatched. Owning a V12 wasn't simply about speed, it was about prestige. The story actually began more than a century ago. Long before supercars existed, V12 engines powered luxury automobiles, racing machines, airplanes, and even military vehicles. Engineers loved the design because the 12 cylinders naturally balanced each other, creating an engine that could run with almost no vibration. It was complex and expensive, but nothing else felt quite like it. As technology improved, the V12 became the heart of the automotive dream. Ferrari built its reputation around it. Lamborghini turned it into a symbol of rebellion. Aston Martin, Jaguar, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Pagani all used V12 engines to create their most iconic cars. For decades, if you imagined the perfect supercar, chances are you imagined a V12 sitting behind the driver. And then something changed. It wasn't because engineers suddenly forgot how to build them. In fact, modern V12 engines became more advanced than ever before. They produced more power, became more reliable, and even consumed less fuel than older versions. The real problem wasn't the engine itself. The first major challenge came from emissions regulations. Around the world, governments began introducing much stricter limits on carbon emissions and fuel consumption. Every new generation of rules became harder to satisfy. Large, naturally aspirated engines, especially V12s, suddenly became extremely difficult to justify. Manufacturers had two choices: spend enormous amounts of money redesigning engines that would sell in very small numbers, or invest that money in new technologies that could power entire future lineups. For most companies, the decision was obvious. But regulations were only part of the story. At the exact same time, turbocharging reached a level nobody expected. Smaller V6 and V8 engines suddenly produced the same power that older V12s once needed 12 cylinders to achieve. They were lighter, cheaper to build, easier to package inside modern cars, and significantly more efficient. Then came hybrid technology. Electric motors completely changed the equation. Instead of making engines larger, manufacturers discovered they could combine smaller engines with instant electric torque. The result was often even faster than a traditional V12. A perfect example is Ferrari. For decades, the V12 defined the company, yet many of its quickest modern cars rely on hybrid systems to achieve incredible performance. Lamborghini followed a similar path, introducing electrification even while trying to preserve the character that made its cars famous. And then there was the rise of fully electric cars. When Tesla proved that electric vehicles could outperform many supercars in straight-line acceleration, the industry realized something important. Raw horsepower was no longer exclusive to massive engines. Companies like Rimac pushed the idea even further, producing electric hypercars capable of acceleration numbers that sounded impossible only a few years earlier. Suddenly, the V12 was no longer the undisputed king of performance. Still, if smaller engines and electric motors are objectively faster, why do enthusiasts continue to love the V12 so much? Because numbers don't tell the whole story. A V12 offers something that is almost impossible to measure. The sound rising through the rev range, the perfectly smooth delivery of power, the emotion of knowing 12 pistons are working together in complete harmony. It's an experience that no electric motor can truly replicate. That emotional connection explains why some manufacturers continue fighting to keep the V12 alive. Ferrari still believes there is a future for naturally aspirated 12-cylinder engines in its flagship models. Lamborghini kept the V12 alive in the Revuelto by combining it with hybrid technology instead of replacing it entirely. Pagani refuses to abandon the engine that defines its cars. Gordon Murray designed the T50 around one of the greatest naturally aspirated V12s ever built, because he believed driving emotion mattered more than chasing the highest horsepower figure. So is the V12 really disappearing? Yes, but not in the way many people think. The days when every luxury brand offered multiple V12 models are coming to an end. BMW has moved away from them. Mercedes-Benz has drastically reduced their presence. Jaguar no longer builds them. Aston Martin has scaled back. For most manufacturers, the economics simply no longer make sense. Instead, the V12 is becoming something much rarer. Not the engine of the future, the engine of collectors. Much like mechanical watches survived the invention of digital watches, the V12 may survive because people value craftsmanship, emotion, and tradition just as much as technology. Ironically, the harder governments and manufacturers push toward electrification, the more special every remaining V12 becomes. The question is no longer whether the V12 will disappear from everyday production. The real question is this: will future generations ever get the chance to experience what made a V12 so unforgettable? Or will its incredible sound exist only in old videos and museums? And if you like these types of videos, subscribe and comment on what other videos you'd like to see on the channel.